Let's look at the Gospels. The Gospels show us how Jesus suffered during his earthly life. They're an account of Jesus' life. That's all the Gospels are. They say, this is what happened to Jesus during his life here, and they're written so that we could have faith. Fairly simple. Let's look at them through fresh eyes and see what Jesus had to deal with. Just going to give you a picture of some of the things that Jesus had to deal with. The first is the temptation of Christ, which, if you remember, we talked about this a little bit ago, a couple weeks ago. It's not just a temptation. The chief tempter, Satan himself, doesn't just come to Jesus and try to get him to do stuff. He comes to him after he's fasted for 40 days and been alone in the desert for 40 days. So, not eating for 40 days, then Satan comes to you and tries to tempt you to do stuff. So your defenses are already at the point where they're at their weakest. You're not doing in a good position if you've been fasting for 40 days. And he comes to him and he has somebody who knows him inside and out test him in the very areas, of what he's liable to do, what he can do. He's like, hey, why don't you make these stones into bread? You can change stuff. And Jesus is like, no, I don't do that. It's like, throw yourself off this thing. Prove to everybody that you're God. And Jesus is like, I do want to prove to him that I'm God, but I'm not going to do it like that. And Satan is like, you're the king of the world. I've got charge over the kingdoms for now. Why don't you just worship me and then I'll give them to you? And Jesus is like, no, I got a different way of doing that. So he was tempted. We're tempted too. You sit there and you're like, man, you get stuff to deal with. You're like, should I? This is a problem I had to deal with recently. How truthful do I have to be on my income? You guys call it income tax? Is there a special word for it? Income tax forms. How truthful do I have to be on this? If I'm off by, a couple dollars here and a couple dollars here and a couple $100 here, is that really stealing from the government? Don't they already have enough money? And your IRS agent or your tax consultant or whatever sitting there going, oh yeah, just right on that. Oh, no, we'll just add a couple zeros on the end here. And you're like, I don't know if I like this. I know this is stealing, but I'm stealing from the government and they're taking money from me anyway, so I'm just taking it back. I'm like, yeah, that does make sense. I should do that. Temptation, stuff like that. Jesus was tempted just like we are. Let's look at the next thing. Matthew 12, John 8. If you look in Matthew 12, Jesus is casting out demons. John 8, Jesus is claiming to be God. The religious leaders of the day are like, you know what? We're pretty certain that you're from the devil. I'm not going to cross my arms in front of my chest. It makes the mic hum. We're pretty sure you're of the devil. Just because, you got this weird power and we don't know how to deal with it. You don't fit in with us. So therefore, because you're not one of us and you don't look like we do and you don't act like we do, you must be from the devil. I don't know if you guys have ever had anybody do that to you, to sit there and say, oh, you do this, you're from the devil. Oh, you do this, you're from the devil. When somebody who is a believer tells another believer that, it crushes you. You're like, I'm not. I believe in Jesus. I'm on board with that whole thing. I'm not. And they're like, no, this is my book and this is my thing. And okay, the Bible may not say it, but this is what I think and you're this way because I said so. It's like, no. Don't give me that. Example from my own life. Oh, you play video games? Oh, that's from the devil. Oh, that's the way to waste time. I was like, okay. I spend, on a Saturday, 3 hours playing a various video game. But the same person who's telling me that playing video games is wrong will sit in front of a TV and watch a football game and a hockey game and a lacrosse game or whatever you guys watch up here, just comparatively, and spend 6 hours doing it and be like, oh, you wasted those 3 hours. I'm like, you wasted those 3 hours staring at a screen anyway. I just was doing this while I was staring at it. And I had a good time doing it. Jesus was accused of being satanic, and let me tell you, when you start working for God and you start doing stuff and moving and shaking, people will call you and say that you're from the devil. They just do it. They're like, that's different. It's from the devil. Oh. Be very careful how you throw this around. Unless you see heads spinning and, weird stuff happening and demons flying out of people, be very careful how you throw this one around. Jesus was accused of being of the devil, and he's doing great stuff. We're like, yay, Jesus. And people are like, he's from the devil. He's not. Give me that. Matthew 14. Death of a close family member. What close family member of Jesus dies in Matthew 14? No, not Lazarus. Somebody else. Cousin. John the Baptist. Cousin. A close family member who's in the ministry dies. Gets his head cut off by the will of like a 14-year-old girl. who dances for the king, and the king's like, give me anything and you'll want it. So the greatest prophet before Jesus dies because a 14-year-old girl wants his head. God wouldn't do that. He let it happen. John's ministry was done. God was like, okay. Death of a close family member. So when you have a child that dies, when you have a parent that dies, and when you have a cousin, an aunt, somebody who you're close to, a grandma, a grandpa, whatever, that dies, you're like, God doesn't know how I feel. He does. He had to watch his cousin get thrown in prison and then killed. He knows what it's like when a close family member dies. Matthew 17 and Matthew 26. Disciples who just don't get it. Let me tell you, from a leadership standpoint, one of the worst things that happens is to train people for leadership and then watch them miss the boat entirely. It's really, really frustrating to spend time, energy, days, weeks, months, years training people for leadership, and then they're like, hey, Lord, this is an example from Luke. Hey, Lord, this city rejected you. Let's call down fire on it. And Jesus is like, hello? Guys, do you not pay attention? I came to save people, not set them on fire. Matthew 17, Jesus is up, comes back from the transfiguration. The disciples are trying to cast out a demon and they can't do it. They're probably doing everything weird. They're probably trying to knock her on the head. They're probably trying to dump water on her. They're probably trying to scream at her. And it's just not coming out. And Jesus goes, you guys not pay attention? Hello? Sermon on the Mount? Were you listening? No? He's trained, he spent years with these people and they just don't get it. Then Matthew 26. Jesus is praying in the garden and he's like, hey, guys, my close buddies, my guys, my homies, my friends, stay awake and pray with me. You know, Peter, James, and John. You guys stay here and pray. I'm going to go over here. He comes back and what are they doing? Sleeping. Hello, McFly, I need somebody to pray for me. Stay awake and pray. It's Back to the Future reference. Pray, come on. And they're like, whatever. You know, they don't know what's coming. You know, if Jesus tells you to pray, maybe you should stay awake and pray. And then they desert him. And then Peter denies knowing him. You think they would be a little bit more on the ball. Spend all that time with him. Nothing. Just don't get it. So Jesus has to sit there and go, come on, guys. Rejection at Gadarene, there's different ways. He comes and casts a demon out of a guy, and the city comes out and says, can you go away, please? We don't want that here. And Jesus is like, okay, this guy people still do this, cutting himself, hurting himself. They tried to chain him, he'd break it off. You know, there's something wrong with this guy, and Jesus helps him. The people come and find him sitting and listening to Jesus in his right mind and clothed and happy. There's a very good thing, and the people are like, nope, we don't want you here. We don't like that here. We just send it away, please. Back it away. Take it somewhere else. We don't want that here. Rejection by a city. Let me tell you, being rejected when you're in the ministry is not fun. Same thing happens here. Rejection by his hometown. Hometown. People who know him. Who are like, yeah, Jesus, I went to school with him. I tried to copy off his carpentry test in 3rd grade. Rejection by his hometown. People he grew up next to. They're like, yeah, Jesus, I remember when he came and cut his knee in front of me on my driveway. You know, I remember when he left his bike out and I backed over it. Sorry, Jesus. He's like, don't worry, I can fix it. No, that didn't happen, but I'm just saying. Rejection by his hometown. People who love him and know him are saying, you're crazy. We don't want that here. Rejection is one of the hardest things to deal with. And again, let me tell you, when you're in the ministry, to be rejected, especially by like a church, and to sit there and have them say, you're not a good pastor, we don't like you here. It's like, twist the knife in the heart. It's not fun. And Jesus had to deal with this all the time. John 10, rejection by the religious leaders. It'd be like if your elders came to you while you're sitting in church one day. Said, you're not a very good Christian. We don't like you. You're not doing a good job. You need to pick up the pace. Or you need to go find a different church. We don't like you here. Oh, man. Finally, the ultimate example of Jesus' suffering, betrayed by one of his own friends, one of his close friends, 12 friends. Think of your 12 closest friends. Maybe they're in your phone under the people you can call and not use your minutes. Betrayal by one of your closest friends. I mean, yeah, Judas wasn't really, really close, but he was close enough. He went around with Jesus wherever he was for 3.5 years. And then says, you know what, I'm going to sell Jesus out for, $3,000. $3,000 not even going to help you last through 2 months. Then he's arrested, and he's beaten. Okay, and not just like, punch, smack, but like punch, flog, skin tearing off, bleeding all over the place, mocking him, making fun of him, not fun.